Louisiana overhauled its prison system. Now Republicans may undo the changes. I'm Tyrone Bowman. This is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. This is part one of a two-part series entitled Louisiana Overhauled Its Prison System. Republicans may undo the changes. According to the Washington Post, 6 years after reforming its criminal justice system, Louisiana is no longer the nation's most incarcerated state. Thousands of nonviolent offenders have been given a second chance, and the state has saved more than $100 million, a windfall for scores of community groups. The reforms, championed by former Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards, shortened some prison sentences, recalculated who was eligible for parole, weakened drug laws, and made it harder to send someone back to prison for violating parole or probation. But the Bayou State's landmark prison reforms may soon be scaled back as newly elected Republican Governor Jeffrey Landry pushes a special session that started Monday to take violent crime, which today is higher than before the ambitious plan went into effect. Let me read that again. But the Bayou State's landmark prison reforms may soon be scaled back as newly elected Republican Governor Jeffrey Landry pushes a special session that started Monday to tackle violent crime, which today is higher than before the ambitious plan went into effect. The former sheriff's deputy ran on a tough on crime platform. Isn't that the cry of Republicans? Law and order, law and order, law and order, except when they violate the law, except when they commit crimes, except when they get caught with wrongdoing, but they don't want the same punishment that they unjustly sometimes dole out to others. Now let's be clear. We must have law and order. America must be a nation of laws, but it must be dispensed evenly across board. There can't be a two-tier justice system in America. It must be a one-tier justice system that works for everybody. All right, now let's get back to this story. The former sheriff's deputy ran on a tough on crime platform and has characterized the measures as some of the state's most failed policies. Our criminal justice system has lost its balance, Landry told lawmakers. The steps we take to restore that balance may be difficult to accept for some. However, when promises are made to victims' families and friends, granting them that justice restores that balance. The battle over Louisiana's reforms echoes a debate taking place across the country as the push to rethink who should go to prison and for how long encounters resistance even in liberal cities. At the center of the clash between those for and against criminal justice reform is the question of whether it has been successful, or if it is too soon to judge. Perhaps no state has more at stake than Louisiana, which until recently had a higher per capita incarceration rate than any other democracy in the world. Black residents make up 67% of the prison population, double their share of the total population according to the Pew Charitable Trusts. The reforms here were touted as a solution to an endemic racial disparities in the criminal justice system and budget woes, but Landry and his supporters contend they in turn have made the state too soft on criminals and left residents vulnerable. Dan Claytor, a former GOP legislator who helped craft the criminal justice reforms in Louisiana, said the question for him has always been, how much justice can you afford considering the state spends more on prisons than any other service except education and health care? He hopes Landry and state legislators could conduct an evidence-based review. It's very easy to say, I want my retribution. I want my vengeance, said Claytor, a former chairman of the Senate Criminal Justice Committee. But does the state get the same return on an investment on someone in the prison system from 5 years of incarceration, 10 years of incarceration, 20 years of incarceration? Where are their diminishing returns? Louisiana is not the only state where criminal justice reforms are expected to roll back. In early February, the Georgia Senate approved a bill creating an additional 30 crimes are not eligible for bail. In Virginia, Governor Phil Scott, a Republican, has proposed legislation that would make more juveniles eligible to be tried in the adult system, while toughening penalties for some drug crimes. In California, a bipartisan group of legislators is pushing to make it easier to imprison those convicted of retail theft. Maryland Governor Wes Moore, a Democrat, has proposed expanding the sentences that can be given to juvenile offenders in his state. I see it happening all across the country. This disinvestment from criminal justice reform, said Alana Bloodworth, executive director of the Black Public Defenders Association. Everyone around the country is complaining to me that they feel like we made a lot of gains, especially after the racial uprising with George Floyd. And now it doesn't matter who the governor is. It feels like everyone is rolling back. Embarrassment by his state's incarceration rate and racial disparities, Edwards sent out to reimagine the state's prison system after he was elected in 2016. Edwards worked with GOP legislators and national nonprofit groups to figure out how to make Louisiana a national model in criminal justice reform. At the time, the state was sending nonviolent offenders to prison at 1.5 to 3 times the rate of other southern states, according to state data. Louisiana's inmate population was so high, the American Civil Liberties Union called the state the prison capital of the world. In 2017, with bipartisan support, Edwards signed into law 10 bills collectively known as the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, or JRI. The legislation recalculated prison terms for nonviolent offenders, gave judges more discretion to offer probation, and made it easier for some prisoners to receive parole, including juveniles sentenced to life in prison. The Pew Charitable Trusts, which helped develop the legislation, estimated the new laws would slash the state's prison population by 10% over the next decade. The measures were also expected to save the state $262 million, money that would be diverted to community-based groups that work to lower crime and recidivism. Stay tuned. Part 2 will be coming up. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender. Never quit.